This is VK6ARN, Newswest. We are a community organisation and we've been serving up the best amateur radio news in Australia since 1931. Hi there and welcome to another episode of Newswest for the 13th of August 2023. Now over to Ono, VK6FLAB, with another episode of Foundations of Amateur Radio.
Foundations of Amateur Radio. Thanks to several high-profile races, we already know that sending Morse is faster than SMS. Recently, I started digging into the underpinnings of Morse code to answer the question, can you send Morse faster than binary encoded ASCII? Both ASCII, the American Standard Code for Information Interchange, and Morse are techniques to encode information for electronic transmission. One is built for humans, the other for computers. To answer the question, which is faster, I set out to investigate. I'm using the 2009 ITU, or International Telecommunications Union, Standard Morse for this. Morse is said to be optimized for sending messages in English. In Morse, the letter E, represented by DIT, is the quickest to send. The next is the letter T, DA, followed by I, DIT DIT, A, DIT DA, N, DA DIT, and M, DA DA. The underlying idea is that communication speed is increased by making the most common letter the fastest to send, and so on. Using a computer, this is simple to test. I counted the letters of almost 400,000 words of my podcast, and discovered that E is indeed the most common letter. The letter T is next, then A, O, and I. Note that I said letter. The most common character in my podcast is the space, which in Morse takes 7 dits to send. Also note that the Morse top 5 is ETIAN. The letter O is 14th on the list in terms of speed. In my podcast, it's the 4th most popular letter. Mind you, my name is Ono, so you might think that that is skewing the data. Not so much. If I use the combined works of Shakespeare, and given that it represents an older and less technical use of language, and doesn't feature my name, I figured it might have a different result. The top 5 in his words are ETOAI. The letter O is the 3rd most popular, and space still leads the charge by nearly 3 times. I also had access to a listing of 850 job advertisements. Yes, still looking. And the character distribution top 5 is EOTIN. The letter O is the 2nd most popular letter. Because I can and I'm, well, me, I converted the ITU Morse code standard to text and counted the characters there too. The top 5 letters are ETION, but the full stop is a 3rd more popular than the letter E. Mind you, that might be because the people at the ITU still need to learn how to use a computer. Seriously, storing documents inside the program files directory under the ITU admin user? What were you thinking? I digress. The space is still on top, nearly 6 times as common as the letter E. As an aside, it's interesting to note that you cannot actually transmit the ITU Morse standard using standard Morse, since the document contains square brackets, a multiplication symbol, asterisks, a copyright symbol, percent signs, em-dashes, and both opening and closing quotation marks, none of which exist as valid symbols. Back to Morse. The definition has other peculiarities. For example, the open parentheses takes less time to send than the closing one, but you would think that they are equally common, given that they come in pairs. If you look at numbers, 5 takes the least amount to send, 0 the longest. In my podcast text, 0 is a 3rd more common than 1, and 9 is the least common. In Shakespeare, 9 is the most common, 8 the least, and in job listings 0 and 2 go head to head, and both are 4 times as common as the number 7, which is the least common. All this to say that character distribution is clearly not consistent across different texts, and Morse is built around more than the popularity of letters of the alphabet. For example, the difference between the left and right parentheses is a da at the end. If you know one of the characters, you know the other. The numerical digits follow a logical progression from all dits to all das between 0 and 9. In other words, the code appears to be designed with humans in mind. There are other idiosyncrasies. Most of the code builds in sequences, but there are gaps. If you visualize Morse as a tree, the letter E has two children, both starting with a dit, one followed by another dit, or dit, the letter I, and the other followed by a da, dit da, the letter A. Similarly, the letter T, a da, has two children, da dit, N, and da da, M. This sequence can be built from many definitions, but not all. The letter O, da da da, has no direct children. There's no da 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 dit or da 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 sequence in Morse. The letter U, dit it da, has one child, F, dit dit da dit, but the combination dit it da da is not valid Morse. It's those missing combinations that led me to believe that Morse isn't as efficient as it could be, and what originally led me to investigate the underpinnings of this language. I think it's fair to conclude at this point that Morse isn't strictly optimized for English, or, if it is, a very small subset of the language. It has several eccentricities, not unlike the most popular computer keyboard layout, QWERTY, which wasn't laid out for humans or speed typing, rather the opposite. It was to slow a typist down to prevent keys from getting in each other's way when there was still a mechanical arm punching a letter into a page. In other words, Morse code has a history. Now, I'm off to start throwing some CPU cycles at the real question. Is Morse code faster than binary encoded ASCII? I'm Ono, Victor Kilo 6, Foxtrot Lima, Alpha Bravo.
The Northern Corridor Radio Group is holding its annual Hamfest on Sunday, the 20th of August 2023. This year, you'll find us again at the Cyril Jackson Community Hall in Bassendean, which is conveniently located for easy access by car and public transport. A light at Ashfield if you're catching the train. The Hamfest starts at 9 a.m. and will finish around 12 noon when the raffle prize winners will be announced. This year, the NCRG have a fantastic array of raffle prizes, including first prize, a HF FT710 HF 50 MHz radio valued at $1,695. Second prize is an ICOM ID52A handheld with D-Star 270 valued at $849. Third prize is an MFJ Enterprises MFJ 991B HF antenna tuner valued at $400. And finally, fourth prize is a Raspberry Pi 4B DIY kit with case, fan, cables and a 60 gig SD card. It's valued around $320. More details are available on the WA Hams, the NCRG Facebook page and the club website. When you're at the event, please visit the NCRG's club table to see the progress of the NCRG Earth Moon Earth station. It's nearly complete and ready to roll. John, VK6NU, will be promoting Summits of the Air, so if you're interested in this facet of amateur radio, be sure to drop by and have a chat with John. Many exhibitors are also lining up for this year's event. Future Systems, QSL Comms, TET Mtron and Bushcom, along with a range of local amateur radio clubs. And if you have one, make sure you bring your handheld. Don't miss out on your chance to snap up a deal and catch up with on-air friends for a coffee and a chat. If you're interested in selling at the Hamfest, please don't hesitate to contact the NCRG Hamfest coordinator, Brad Peters, VK6BAP.
Since 1931, Newswest has provided amateur radio news for Western Australia and beyond. This is VK6ARN.
Hi, I'm Steve Kennedy, VK6SJ, with this week's episode of Did You Know? Did you know that about the most devastating thing that can happen in your shack is generally related to either a direct or near-hit lightning strike? It actually happens more often than you might realise. In my day job, I probably assist to half a dozen hams a year, replacing almost every aspect of the shack, from antennas, coax, radios, amplifiers, SWR meters, tuners and power supplies. Most interesting thing though is that in 40 years of being in the radio industry, I think I could count on one hand the amount of lightning damaged sites I've worked on in the commercial radio sector, even though I have way more commercial customers than amateurs. Commercial installations are often far in excess of 30 metres off the ground, compared to the average amateur installation at around 10 or 15 metres. You would expect that with a higher mast, a commercial installation will be hit more, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Why is this so? There are a number of views on lightning damage and how lightning strikes on radio installations occur. Most of them actually sound plausible, but since I'm the one with your ear and it's my microphone, I'm going to give you my thoughts. Firstly, let's talk about why a lightning strike occurs. We all know that lightning is caused by a build-up of electricity in the clouds, and once a potential exceeds an amount that's required to ionise the air, hence creating a path from Earth to the clouds, which is in effect the lightning strike. So lightning often occurs at a point that is above the ground because positive charges build up in objects on the ground until the potential between the negative charged clouds and the positively charged objects on the ground exceed the amount of potential required to ionise the air and allows an electrical path between the two. The trick to reducing the likelihood of a strike is to bring the potential of any objects above the ground back to the same potential as Earth, which is said to be at zero potential. How do we do that with a mast? Even if we ground the mast, there's still a potential for a build-up of charge on the structure, particularly if the mast is an old one with a build-up of rust between sections, etc. What is it that's done on a commercial installation that maybe isn't done so well on a typical ham mast? Let's talk about what's normal and a part of Australian standards. Earthing the mast. This isn't just a 3-metre copper rod hammered into the ground, but could be depending on the quality of the ground. Once an earth system is established, it is tested for earth resistance. Typically we would be looking for around 5 ohms between a peg hammered into the ground 10 metres or so away and the earth system. How much rod do we need to achieve that? As much as it takes is the answer on that one. Typically this could be 3 by 6 metre stakes housed in a 50mm diameter hole with an earthing compound used to bond the rod to the earth. If it's a guide structure, you would also place a single 6-metre rod at each guy point and bond it back to the mast base using a 40mm copper strap, also buried and bonded to the ground using the same earthing compound used for the copper rods. To top this off, check the entire structure for rust, particularly at junctions between the sections of the mast. If these aren't clean, you'll have high resistance points that can isolate the mast from this great earthing system you've created. This takes the thickest earth cable you can afford, 72mm is a good choice, and attaching it to the earthing system on the ground, take it to the top of the mast and place it on a lightning finial that is above any other antenna on the structure. This bonds the top of the mast to something as close to humanly possible to ground potential, hence significantly reducing the likelihood of a strike. You can rent the earth resistance testers from any test equipment rental business. Next step is to bond your coax cable to ground also. If your feeder is like most and connected to a balun and then to a balanced antenna, then you have actually created a competing path for a lightning strike, and all your work on earthing the structure has protected your structure, but not the radio equipment in the shack that's connected to your coax. How do you do that? Easiest way is to bond your cable to using earthing kits. This is typically used for heliax coax runs and used to connect the bed shield of the coaxial cable to the mast, which is then earthed to your mast earth. Typically you would bond the cable to the mast at the top of the mast where your antenna is and where the cable leaves the mast. If the mast is over 50 metres in height, you might also consider one halfway down the mast. That's great, but what if you can't afford heliax? That stuff's expensive. You can get earthing kits for LL400, which is a popular choice of cable for hams. Check out your local ham shop. I haven't seen them for RG213, but given the physical specs for RG213 and LL400 are very similar, you could probably use the same LL400 earthing kits on 213. If you're using RG58, well, you're on your own and I can't help you. The next level of protection to consider is actually quite common in many ham shacks, and that is the lightning protection device. This is best placed as the coax enters your shack. It must be bonded to the shack earth, which should also be bonded to the mast earth where practical. If you don't bond the lightning protector to your RF earth, you may as well not use one in the first place. As a byproduct of using the device, it's also a handy way to terminate your cable on the outside of the shack, with something more flexible on the other side inside the shack to your equipment. These lightning protection devices are available from Ted Emtron and their resellers and are very reasonably priced. Or you can buy a gas capsule equipped arrestor that can be reused after a strike by just replacing the capsule. The gas capsule arrestors are probably best for installations where you might be designing for that time when the ACMA finally allows us to use 2 kilowatts. Last step is to bond your equipment to the same RF ground used for the mast and feeder cable. If you can get away with the feeder gland plate coming into the shack, then this is generally a good point to collect all earth cables in the shack. So we do all this, we can reduce the likelihood of a strike to as low as practically possible. It also has another benefit: differences in potential between your radio and the antenna. Noise is created. Removing all these potential differences should also result in a lower noise floor on your receiver. For more handy advice, talk to your local ham shop, who should be able to supply most of what you need, plus good advice. Well, thanks for listening. This has been Steve Kennedy, VK6SJ, with another episode of Did You Know? If you'd like a text copy of this or other articles, they'll be posted on my blog page at dxradiosystems.com.au about 2 weeks after it's gone to air.
Do you own a cheap Chinese handheld? For new and returning hams, these radios are often shunned following criticism of their poor build and potential for interference. In fact, do you own a handheld at all, including the top brands? If you do, please bring it to the NCRG Hamfest on the 20th of August. Following discussion of F-Troop, we've decided to put these radios to the test, but we need your help. The original data set of 2 is not statistically significant, so we're looking to get as many as we can on the day. Head to the WA VHF group tables and find Ono, VK6FLAB, who will run your radio into a spectrum analyzer for measurement. What's in it for you? We plan to openly publish the results of the test, devoid of names and call signs, to provide more insight on how different makes and models perform on the day. By bringing your radio and participating in the test, we'll make sure you get a copy of the anonymised results, along with results specifically for your handheld radios tested on the day. If you don't want your personal details to be recorded on the day, that's fine. We'll just record the test results, no sweat. In the spirit of amateur radio, this is a bit of an experiment, and we'd love to see you and your radio on the day. The bigger the diversity of low and high priced handhelds, old and new, the better the data we can gather. On behalf of Randall, VK6 Whiskey Romeo, the WA VHF group, Ono, VK6FLAB, the participants of F-Troop, the Net for New and Returning Hams, and finally the NCRG, it's great to see this collaboration taking place. I'm Glenn, VK6 Papa Alpha Whiskey, and I'll also be at the test bench on the day. See you at Hamfest.
This is Newswest from VK6ARN, produced by amateurs for amateurs, purely about the hobby of amateur communication and experimentation.
Hello from the WA VHF group. This is Dennis, VK6AKR. Today I would like to offer a few thoughts and maybe start a few conversations around VHF and above. There are many amateur radio clubs throughout the world that have VHF in their name, and there are a few here in VK. A couple of nights ago, some of our members were having a discussion around the apparent level of activity on VHF here in VK6, and we concluded that it was lower than might be expected. And perhaps the level of uptake of amateur radio generally by newly minted amateurs could be higher too. After all, they have spent a fair amount of money with training, taking exams, applying for their licenses, and so on. As listeners will know, the WA VHF group, in common with others, accesses and uses the lower bands too. Anyone who has visited our QTH at Wireless Hill in Applecross will have seen our VHF log periodic as ample evidence of that. And several of our members access the really low bands. You've probably heard of the pre-loved aeronautical non-directional beacon at Manjimup, which Professor Peter Hall, VK6HP from Curtin University, has repurposed into an experimental whisper site, running in the 2190 and the 630 metre bands. Club member Dave, VK6KV, has contributed time and talent helping to get that station on air, and he and I have regularly received it and sent reports. Back to the higher bands for a moment, though. As amateurs will know, the relationship between frequency and wavelength is something that governs our construction and use of antennas. My interest in VHF and above stems largely from the suburban block syndrome. As block sizes shrink, so too does the scope for larger, lower band antennas. Magnetic loops, loaded dipoles and so on mitigate some of this, but compromise antenna performance in one way or another. Can you imagine constructing, far less installing, an Alford slot antenna for the 30-metre band? But with VHF and above, the construction of quarter, half or even full wavelength antennas becomes achievable. And ready-built rigs, such as the handhelds, provide a relatively painless entry into the hobby. My Watson 2-metre 70cm handheld is a case in point. Antenna construction for 2 metres and 70cm bands is well covered in the literature, with the ready availability of reticulation pipe and fittings to form the mechanical structure, and coax for the element or elements. A dual-band vertical antenna is online in under an hour. Club members Dave, VK6DM, and Dave, VK6KV, have hosted antenna build days at the club for Pogo Stick and Bunnings Yagi tape measure antennas respectively. Peter, VK6PBS, from the Peel Amateur Radio Group, has an identical tape measure Yagi, and they work well. A bit more expensive than the Pogo Stick, but the extra time and effort to construct them makes them worthwhile. In summary then, there are quite a few resources out there for new operators or those returning to the hobby perhaps from HF days, keen to try their luck on VHF, UHF and above. And don't forget the friendly UHF VHF field days to hone your skills. Opportunities abound. If this has whet your appetite or curiosity, then please consider visiting the WA VHF group on a Saturday afternoon as per our website or Facebook page. Easy to find, easy parking, friendly people, and a great place for families with young children to enjoy the grounds. There is a museum exhibition titled Solid State that you can visit while you're there too. 73 from Dennis, VK6AKR for the WA VHF group. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, yes, it's Roy, VK6 X-Ray Victor with this week's Amateur Radio Helpline, 13th of August 2023. Today I have from the estate of VK6 Delta Golf Silent Key, have the following bundle. I have an iMac if you prefer, Sierra Kilo 510 Jumbo Socket, an iMac SK506 ceramic glass chimney, an iMac HR8 anode cooler, an iMac 4000 tube, 4-1000 tube that is, all items NOS and 450 the lot. Contact Nora on phone number 63635350. Yes, I checked that number, it is correct, it looked a bit strange. 63635350, and you'll talk to Nora, or you may phone 043 835 2661. I'll say again 043 835 2661. Regards from Bob, VK6KRC, looking after that one. Next item comes from Barry for the Jerry Wild shack, VK6GW, now in a nursing home, and his shack is being cleared and the house will be put on the market later on during the year. And we have the following: a Daiwa DC7011 round controller with Daiwa antenna rotator, a DR7600 Charlie X-ray, requires a 6-foot core cable, tested okay however, price $400 the lot, and still has a high frequency vacuum tube voltmeter model 1600 Bravo by Romeo Delta Electronics. Old style, but still works with a manual, supplied at $100. There was also a Hallicraft's 2 kilowatt linear amplifier model Hotel Tango 33. Requires a 2 kilowatt power supply, covers HF frequencies 80 through to 10 meters, uses 2 by 4 CX250 Bravo tubes in the final. RF unit complete with filament and bias transformers. Good project for an experimenter. And a couple of used 4CX250 tubes as well. Asking $450. Contact Barry Burns, that's VK6 Alpha Delta India. His email address is bravo.juliet.burns@bigpond.com. I'll say again, bravo.juliet.bravo uniform Romeo November Sierra @bigpond.com, or you may ring mobile 0428 959 771. 0428 959 771. The following items are repeats. Kai in Broome is looking for a ICOM 7100 transceiver, antenna analyzer, any model, 40 and 10 meter vertical antennas, and a 5/8 wavelength for monoband 20 meters, 5/8 wavelength monoband for 40 meters, plus a Mike Alpha Tango 125 Echo tuner. He's in Broome and would like anyone who can help him to contact him. His email address is Victor Kilo 6 Kilo Sierra Juliet @westnet.com.au. I'll say again, Victor Kilo 6 Kilo Sierra Juliet @westnet.com.au. Greg, VK6 Echo Delta, did have or has a IC 718 HF transceiver, 10 metres through 160 metres, 100 watts out, comes with microphone, power lead, original handbook, very good condition, $450. Contact Greg on phone 0417 900 874. 0417 900 874. Cheers, says Greg. Steve, VK6 Victor Zulu, still looking for a AM transmitter, 50 watt transmitter by Johnson Ranger, Panda Club, KW Vanguard, KW Valiant, Geloso equivalent. Anyone with a 50 watt AM transmitter, please, if you can help, contact Steve. He's also looking for tubes type 6 Delta 6, 6 Charlie 6, 6 Bravo 7, and a number 42. And we'd like to hear from anyone who can help him with that as well. Steve's email address is Sierra Tango Echo Victor Kilo 6 Victor Zulu @tpg.com.au. I'll say that again. Yeah, why not? Sierra Tango Echo Victor Kilo 6 Victor Zulu, all one in one word, @tpg.com.au. And that'll do for me for this week. Thank you once again for listening. And if you are still listening and you would like to contribute to next week, please send me an email, roy.watkins@bigpond.com. Will get me. 7-3 until next time. Cheers.
Hi there, I'm Clinton, VK6FCRC, and I'd like to thank our Newswest team of volunteers and broadcasters each week, and those regularly submitting content each week. I'd also like to thank our readers and you for listening. Please stand by now for callbacks after the ident, or if nobody is taking callbacks, please fill out the form on the VK6.net website so we know how many people are listening or reading Newswest each week.